My name is Omer Ismael, Program Manager of Artscape Daniels Launchpad, Scarborough born Somali Canadian. I was born in Canada. My family came from Somaliland, which is the northern part of Somalia. And I was one of the only people in my family who was born here. In the 80s, it was a weird time for many people, but it was a particularly weird time for my family. We left Somaliland, we left Hargeisa, where we were based out of for our entire lives. And up until then, we spent some time in Saudi Arabia, considering the conflict, and that was ongoing for many, many years. It was years just before the Civil War ended, so the challenge for us was recognizing that conflict was continuing to exist, and my mother and father made a decision at that time to say we have to find out somewhere to, somewhere safe to live. The opportunity came to go out west. We landed in the US, actually, of all places. Family spent some time in Boston, of all places. About 6 months to about a year after staying in the United States of America, in Boston, in the 80s, as Black Muslims, it wasn't the best place that we wanted to live. So shortly after, my mom made the executive decision to say, hey, I heard Canada's nice, so let's go north. Literally crossed the border from Buffalo with no plans, hopped on a Greyhound bus, literally landed in Union Station. We had no idea what underground stations were, because for the most part, most of Hargeisa, up until a couple of years ago, it's not a thing to build below. It's a thing to build upward. But we chose Canada because of the idea of what Canada was at that time in the 80s politically. It stood for something that was something that we needed, some sense of peacefulness, some sense of a place where we could grow up and become the people that my parents wanted us to become. And fortunately, ever since we came here in '88, all of us stayed here and we never chose to leave. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to be doing in my future. You could see where I was at mentally and what my perception of my future could be based on what I wanted to do in my future. So when I was a kid in elementary school, the only thing I could think of was, I want to be a firefighter, because kids just like fire trucks. And then eventually started to be more realistic about the work I wanted to do in middle school and high school, because that's how the system works. For me, I was thinking, cool, I like education. I like education a lot, so I'll be a teacher. But I'm like, I don't think I'm smart enough to be a teacher, so I passed on that. Whatever I had to do in my future, it had to serve some sense of a purpose and contribute back to the people who surround me. So for me, all the job options were in some sense associated with service. In service to people, in service to ideas, in service to values. I had a moment, I shit you not, when I was in 11th grade, where I was almost going to sign up for the military. Why would I sign up for the military? It makes no sense. It was against my political beliefs. It was against my ideology. It was against my people for the most part. And also, I would be considered the enemy at that time. For me, as a Somali Muslim, I saw that as an opportunity where I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't getting the best grades when I was in high school. My skill sets weren't aligned with some of the job opportunities I wanted to do. And I kid you not, I had a couple friends who went down the path of reserves and the Army Reserves, and I was like, oh, they pay for everything? And I almost got caught up in something I didn't believe, but I saw it as an opportunistic moment. So there's been many times, many times, where I got close to taking a path because it was the easy one. It was the one that was available, and it was the one that was being, promoted around me. You know what you know because it's often around you. And for me, the options that were around me weren't the best. The one thing I could never do is work a job that didn't look that I didn't feel was something that I would be doing. We joke about things being off-brand, but for me, I was there was a lot of things that weren't on-brand for me, especially when it comes to employment opportunities. And I've worked in places I didn't like, but it's because I needed to do it. And I needed to do it because I needed the money. But for me, it's if I'm thinking about my career, when I was thinking all the different things that I want to do, all the different companies or organizations I wanted to work with, I looked at the people who worked there over the things that they were known for doing. For the most part, the one thing that always stood out was if I don't see myself connecting with the work that they're doing or the people that I'm working with, I can't do that. As much of that came from my experiences growing up, a reflection of wanting my identity represented in the spaces I'm working in. I'm very connected to my community, and I value my community, and I will take my community where I go. And if I can't bring my community there, then I'm sure as hell not staying there. So the one challenge that I've experienced often that kind of impeded my ability to get to where I am, and that I still see often, is not knowing the word to describe the experience you're having. especially in spaces in which you're coming up with like issues of Islamophobia or racism. It's like the experiences you have, you know, in the core, in your heart or your mind, that you feel something's wrong, something's not right, and you don't know what those words are to really label it. For me, it's like, it's a beautiful thing to know that word. There's this whole idea of schools of thought around the words that really, you know, identify what systemic discrimination looks like, identify what exclusionary practices look like. These words, as much as they are labels, they're empowering to know that now, one, you have identified what it is, but also you can learn more about it. You can find paths to actually making this experience less harmful and challenging for you. You can find people who are, you know, addressing these issues already, who have experienced this or have overcome this, who can be allies to a certain extent, but also people who can guide you down a pathway to understand it. And it's important to surround yourself around people who are more attuned to that if you're not attuned to it. So it gets a little easier to identify what you're experiencing at any given moment. One bold thing that I think I felt I committed to that, you know, required courage would be having the confidence and the ability to trust the people that inspire me. I kid you not, I would have been in a lot of stupid situations in my life if it wasn't for the people around me. And whether it be my family, my mother, my best friends, some of my coworkers, like these are the people that are my council of elders, the people that when I know I don't have the answer, I go to them and I throw my trust wholeheartedly into them, because often they're either an extension of my strengths or often the counterbalance to my weaknesses. There's this idea that advice can be a gift, and you don't always have to use gifts, but you're supposed to accept them. For me, I'm willing to accept advice from my friends, especially when it comes to issues around big life decisions, especially my work. Like, there's not a single career decision I've made without passing it through a couple of my peers. It's reassuring to know that not only do I have people I can go to, but more importantly, there are people who are invested in me as much as I am invested in me. Where I come from, in my mindset, is that reduce risk at all costs, because at the end of the day, whether it's financial risk or social risk or whatever the risk may be, if it can come to a point where it harms me personally, I choose to not go down that path. So for me, it's like, I'm not saying I make safe decisions, because my career, my life was not necessarily safe, but I do feel that I went and made decisions that I knew that I would be capable of actually achieving. I'm not the most bold guy, but fortunately, that hasn't held me back. When I hear I didn't come this far to only come this far, what I hear is when major life decisions came and I wanted to choose to be selfish about my own interests, I knew that every little struggle that my mom went through, my older brothers and sister went through, that my grandfather went through, that my father went through, that my grandmother went through, it's like they put in work, and whatever I'm doing today is incomparable to what they've gone through. So for me to squander any opportunity to push my family, my family's name, my people, my community, my friends, would be ridiculous. Like, I can't squander that. I wish I could be confident in going about saying, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna do this for myself. But no, my family didn't work this hard. My family didn't travel this far. My mom didn't uproot herself from her home, where her family has lived for centuries, to not have me fulfill the most that I could possibly do in my career. My only piece of advice would be to recognize that any challenges or problems or things that you're struggling with, to recognize that someone like you has dealt with it as well, has struggled with it as well. My one piece of advice is to seek them, find them, look for them. Look for pieces that they've written about it, stories that they've shared, because the answers are likely out there. With the respect to that, you know, many people have come before you, and many will come after you. So the reality is that there's tons of lived experiences that people can learn from, and I feel like I benefited a lot from looking to others for answers, as opposed to looking only in words. You know, you could say that's mentorship, but I'm just like, talk to people who've lived. Reach out to people who've done things already, who've struggled. I learned the most from people who struggled. I didn't learn from like CEOs. I learned from people who were dead broke and figured out a way to not be dead broke. Those people are who inspire me. You don't have to have wealth around you to seek wealth and learn how to get wealthy. You don't have to seek inspiration, influence, value from people who are traditionally valued by society. My name is Omer Ismael, and I didn't come this far to only come this far.
Didn't come this far to only come this far.